Welcome to the Bullpen Show, powered by Architect and Carolina Counseling for Athletes. I'm Austin Alexander, and we got a ton of information that we want to get to for you today. I'll bring in our guest in just a moment. First, I just want to make mention of a couple of Palmetto pros, guys that are in pro ball. They're doing a good job. One is Carmen Majinski is going to be our next guest on the Bullpen Show. He's throwing in the rotation for the Pittsburgh Pirates and has since been joined by Evan Sisk. Evan Sisk played at Louisville High School, also the College of Charleston. So pretty cool to have a couple of Palmetto State guys on the same team, one in the bullpen and one in the rotation. So we'll talk to Carmen next time, and you'll get a chance to hear what's going on with those guys. I also want to mention, obviously, on the high school front, tons of high school baseball going on. Region standings are on our website. All that information is on thediamondprospects.com. A lot of things coming down to the wire. Regions at all five classifications are taking shape, and of course playoff berths and seedings are taking place as well. All that information's on there as we get out and cover as much as we can, from standings to scoreboard, the watch list with stats for players. All that information, you can find it right at thediamondprospects.com. Also on our social media, Twitter, X, and Instagram. So now that I've gotten that out of the way, I want to bring in our guest who I've known for quite a while. We got a little bit of history together. I'm not only a good friend of mine, but somebody I respect a whole lot in the business. Tim Perry. Now, Tim Perry is at Winthrop University right now. He's in his second tour of duty at Winthrop. He's been a college coach for 15 years. His last 10 years before going back to Winthrop, he was the head coach at Airport High School. Also did a lot of work for Diamond Prospects during that time, working our events and covering some games. So this is a guy that's worn a lot of caps, and we're really excited to have him on this version of the Bullpen Show. So at this point, I just want to welcome you in. First of all, thanks for joining us. And TP, how are you today?
I'm great, Austin. Thanks so much for having me. Really enjoy getting to, spend a little time on here and obviously talk baseball with you.
Well, we appreciate you saying yes. And folks, just so you know, he pinch hit at the last second. We had a guest we had to move real quick, and he was able at the drop of a hat to jump on with us. So we'll get right to it. I appreciate you once again hopping in with us, and we'll talk a little bit about your team right now. Obviously, the Winthrop Eagles are flying high. You guys are 27-14, doing real well. Your RPI is nestling into a good spot. Season berth is certainly in play for you guys. Not only in your conference, but also maybe back past that as well. If you could just kind of give us an idea how the 26 Eagles look right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously coming off a tough one last night. Tough loss to Elon, which we led 8-3 and just kind of got away from us a little bit there at the end. But we've been playing really well on the weekends, outside of one weekend series at Presbyterian. We've won every other series and had a big sweep this past weekend over USC Upstate.
Now, as you look forward, obviously you guys are still positioning yourself to maybe win the conference, going into the conference tournament, and possibly an NCAA berth. How do you like your chances going forward?
If we can continue to stay healthy and continue to pitch at a high level and play good defense and continue to hit, we're leading the country in hit batsmen. That's one thing we pride ourselves on, just really being obsessed with getting on base and whatever it takes to get on base. And if we keep doing some really good things, with a team offense approach, and the biggest thing on the mound, we just got to cut down our free bases, and that's what got us last night. And really, in those 14 games, they all have a common theme, just too many free bases. And we just when we limit our frees to 3 or less, we play better defense, and we've won most of those games. I think if we can continue to do that the rest of the way, we'll put ourselves in good position. I feel like we're still getting better each game, and we hope to be playing our best baseball over this last month.
Well, if you're just joining us, I got on the air here Tim Perry. He is the pitching coach and recruiting coordinator at Winthrop University. Take this opportunity, if you would, Coach Perry, just talk a little bit about Winthrop. When you're sitting there talking to a recruit, when you pick up the phone, you call a guy, maybe when you're sitting there with your stopwatch and radar gun and you're evaluating a guy. Tell us what Winthrop is looking for. Tell us why, if I'm a recruit or I have a son who's a recruit who's listening to this right now, why is Winthrop baseball, why is your program somewhere they need to consider and know a little bit more about?
Yeah, I mean, it's a special place. It really is. It's a special place with a lot of tradition that I really think, a lot of people don't know how much of a premium mid-major baseball program it was in the late 90s, early 2000s. I mean, this past weekend, we recognized three teams that were championship teams and went to regionals. One was the '81 team, which I believe was Winthrop's first team, played for an NAIA national championship, and Coach Turbyville, was the first coach here and did a great job with that first program, and kind of many years after that, and then turned it over to Joe Hudak, who I worked for as a grad assistant here in 2000. But Coach Hudak had some really special years throughout the late 90s and early 2000s, up until 2012. There were obviously some things around COVID, where the school lost some enrollment, as every school did, and trying to build back from that. I think with the new transition to Mike McGuire as the head coach, and obviously he gave me an opportunity to come on board with him. But really to take a once storied program and try to get it back to the level where we're a mid major that's not only trying to win the Big South Championship, but trying to contend for an at-large bid, which they were getting several years throughout the early 2000s. I mean, the Big South Conference was year in and year out getting two teams in, whether it be Coastal, Liberty, Winthrop. I was at UNC Asheville in 2006. We won the tournament, but Winthrop got an at-large bid, and that was one of the teams that was recognized this past weekend. I think that team won like 45 games and had a very I want to say they played in a regional championship that year, maybe over at Chapel Hill. Very storied program. Obviously, the facilities, if you haven't been here, there's very few mid majors that can boast about having 2,000 chairback seats and a indoor hitting facility that was just upgraded this past summer. One of our alums, Will Simmons, made a very generous donation to help us renovate and upgrade the indoor hitting facility. It's now fully netted around the outside, so we can open it up into one big area to hit in, or we can have it divided into three equal cages, which we use, kind of that setup for a daily basis. But we also have, a full service training room right behind our dugout. We have a coach's locker room right off our dugout. We have a weight room that Will Simmons also, that was one of the first things he did when Coach McGuire got the job, is he came in and said, I want this weight room to be something, that your players want to come in every single day and want to get better. And those two areas, the hitting facility and the weight room, are two of your staples for development. And so the fact that we addressed those immediately and made those top notch, brand new, state of the art Sorinex equipment, our players, they get a lot of use out of it. Our pitchers are in there every day, doing their activation, rollout, stretching. Obviously, we lift there with, usually three groups of about 8 to 10 players. And so, it's a great environment for our guys to really thrive in. We've made upgrades to the locker room and the player lounge as well. Kind of making those more that we set up the lounge more like a classroom, because we go in there and do a lot of scouting reports. We have a lot of pitchers meetings. We have a lot of offensive meetings. I think our position players are meeting in there in about another hour to go over some video review, from last night's game. The locker room, while we're going to address some needs in there as far as new carpeting, new lockers, things like that over the next couple of years, we moved all the couches in there and made it more of a place that the guys wanted to hang out and watch TV and play games and just spend a lot of time around our facility. So it's a really special place. I'm excited to be back. Mike and I worked together here 25 years ago for Coach Hudak, and we got back together here not this past June, but the June prior to that, and it was like we'd never skipped a beat. Just a really really good friend, and it's a lot of fun to come to work every day, with somebody that you've known that long, and that you share a lot of the same common goals and beliefs.
Well, obviously, in the very beginning, I mentioned that you had been at different programs. You'd been at Airport, and before that, Asheville, Temple. and Newberry. So 15 years, obviously, at the college level. Sandwiched in that was the 10 years at the high school level. I'd like to kind of talk a little bit and camp out for a moment about how, how the game has changed potentially, maybe even the college game has changed from the first round as a college coach to now being back into the college game. Also, talk a little bit about the advantages, maybe having gone back to the high school level, some relationships you developed potentially, or just some things you understood a little bit better about the high school game that has helped you now in this tenure as a college coach.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'll be the first to admit, the first time around, I kind of got my start here under Coach Hudak and Coach McGuire and learned a lot. And then Coach Medlin gave me the opportunity to come back to my alma mater, and come back to Newberry College and coach the pitchers, get my feet wet recruiting. I was very young and very green, and then moving on to UNC Asheville, and getting the opportunity to work with Willie Stewart, who was, essentially we were the same age and both very young at the time, but just trying to learn on the job and just embrace everything that came along. Made a lot of mistakes along the way. I think every time I have the opportunity to see one of our alums from Asheville. I tell them how much I appreciate them and I apologize to them for all the mistakes that I made, not only as a pitching coach, but, just you learn so much along the way about, being more transformational as opposed to being transactional. And you learn a lot about, what's really important and the relationships along the way as opposed to, I think there were so many times early in my career, I was looking for that next job. I was chasing wins and losses or chasing wins and getting too invested in the results and forgetting about the process and forgetting about what my why was. So I think the biggest thing about going back to the high school level, right out of college, I got to work with one of my mentors, John Doherty at Socastee High School. And, Coach Doherty, I grew up in his dugout at USC Spartanburg. And, he's almost like a second father to me in a lot of ways and just, learned so much more than baseball, learned so much about life and just about how to treat people. And, so the second time around, at the high school level, getting the opportunity to be a head coach at Airport High School, I owe a lot to Chris Kirkland for picking up the phone and calling me about it and not only talking to Kirk Burnett, our athletic director at the time, but, both of those guys for giving me that opportunity. And it was a time where I was leaving Temple and had gone through coaching changes at Asheville and Temple and, really was just kind of looking for what is the next move? What is best for our family? And at the time, my wife Jenna and I had a 2-year-old daughter, Ava Grace, and when the high school opportunity came, it was like maybe this is what the good Lord is telling us and leading us in that direction, and it just kind of worked out. I met with Kirk and had a great meeting, and everything. My best friend and college roommate Mark Bonnet had gone to Airport and played there, so I knew a lot about the school and the area, and it was just it fit at the time. It fit, and my wife got a job within a couple days as a psychologist in Richland County, and it just everything fell into place, and it was like this is where the good Lord's leading us, and man, 10 very special years there, getting a chance to work with 12-year-olds through 18-year-olds it's a special animal, and I had an unbelievable staff. Obviously, Chris Kirkland told me from the first time he called me, "Hey, I'll come out of retirement and I'll help you get this thing going." Casey Bradwell, who's one of my closest friends now and the head coach at Airport High School, Casey was looking to get in. He had just graduated from Winthrop, and so he had played for Coach Hudak, and we had a lot of the same terminologies and beliefs about pitching, and he was a perfect fit as an assistant coach, young and just hungry and ready to do anything. And we added a couple other alums along the way that really cared about Airport High School, and it made that really special. Um, having so many people that were invested in the high school and invested in that area, of Springdale and West Columbia and Casey area. Uh, we got it rolling pretty quick. I mean, the first year it was tough. Won 4 baseball games. And man, it was tough. But the next year we start off 18-0, and we end up winning, 26 games, setting a school record, losing to AC Flora in the state championship. But from that moment forward, we really got it moving toward a very respectable program, and it was because all of us, we had the same. Again, we were all pulling the same rope in the same direction, and we were all willing to work with the B team and the JV and the varsity. We were willing to stay late at night and do laundry and just really do whatever it took to get that program moving in the right direction. Like I say, 10 very special years there. And I was so happy that Casey got the opportunity to, be a head coach when I left and went to Coastal Carolina, and man, he's done a great job. I mean, they have just kept it moving and won a state championship last year, which we were never able to do. We were on the cusp of it a few times, but never able to do it. And, he's got a lot of that same staff together, and a couple of our former players have joined him. And, it's just, it's still a really special place. And he's doing some great things with it. So I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about, um, coaching 12 to 18-year-olds as opposed to 18 to 22-year-olds. A lot of times you're so much more than a coach for 3 hours on the field. I mean, you're helping them with their schoolwork. You're helping them. You're trying to get them toward graduation. You're mentoring them, about so many things outside of ground balls and HBPs and throwing strikes. You're in a lot of ways. My wife is a doctorate in psychology, but I felt like a psychologist. A lot of days working with those young men, and I can't trade that for anything. It was like I say, it taught me so much about myself and how I wanted to coach, moving forward.
Well, you mentioned that basically that's where you spent that hiatus away from college baseball. You were the beneficiary, Diamond Prospects was, of a lot of your efforts when you were at Airport High School. You were able to get out and cover some games for us. You worked a lot of our events, if not all of the events during that span. And like many things DP, it's a family affair too. Your wife, Jenna, Ava Grace, who's now a senior in high school, has worked at the front gate for us many, many times in different cities. And a lot of times, even at the last second, the Perrys have been a huge, I guess, part of our DP family, and that we were still able to enjoy. The ladies in your life too also still help out, and it's pretty cool. So, of course, you and I go back way before that. We played with each other, against each other in high school, all the way through college, and of course, we're about the same age, and we've been in this thing for a little time now. And of course, you get a chance to meet a lot of good people in this game. There are a few guys that are a little rough around the edges, but a lot of really good folks in this game. And you've had a chance. You already named some already that are mentors of mine too. But I'd like to kind of give you the floor back to kind of talk a little about some of the people that have helped shape and mold you, not only as a person, but a baseball coach and as a man.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the first and foremost, my dad, Lou Perry, and I lost him a couple years ago. But, from day one, I mean, just taught me everything about, being selfless, serving, and putting other people before yourself. He was a tremendous little league coach, taught the fundamentals. We were always going to be able to play catch at a high level. We were always going to be able to bunt. He didn't know the game the way so many of the people that I were blessed to work for later. But man, some of the foundation of everything that he taught, and just watching him and learning from him about being a dad and about being a husband and just about being a faithful servant, a good Christian man. And so I'd be remiss if I didn't say, my dad, number one. I mentioned John Doherty, getting the opportunity. Coach Doherty and my dad did the FCA together at USC at Spartanburg, and getting the opportunity to be in his dugout and learn from him and, so many of the players along the way that helped, shape me not only as a player, but as a person. I still are in contact with them. Actually, I'm on a text message right now that's been blowing up all morning about Kenny Dixon, one of Coach Doherty's former players, had a successful surgery earlier this morning. So prayers to Kenny and his family and all those close friends that are watching closely and praying for him. Coach Wallace was another one. Was a former player of Coach Doherty's, and so I got to know Coach Wallace, who I know you played for at Spartan Methodist. What a great man and great coach and just a great man. And we lost him way too soon as well. Tim Medlin, who I played college baseball for, and then had the opportunity to go back and work for. And again, another one that man, he taught me a lot about baseball, but he taught me so much more just about being a good person and doing things the right way. And uh, I those 6 years, the four playing for him and the two working with him, I wouldn't be where I am today without that. Joe Hudak, it was great to see him this weekend as they were recognizing a few of his former teams. But Coach Hudak and the way he ran the program at Winthrop, and really that's where I really learned a lot about pitching. Thought I knew a little bit, and then I found out, man, this guy really, controlling the running game and fielding your position and the big five and being able to change speeds and throw your secondary for strikes. And, our philosophy here at our philosophy here at Winthrop is, make hitters hit. And I got that from Joe Hudak. Your job is not to make hitters miss. Your job is to make hitters hit. And the law of averages tells you that, a good hitter's going to hit 300. He's going to fail 7 out of 10 times. So make hitters hit. And that's what Coach Hudak taught me at a very young age as a grad assistant. And I've taken it throughout my whole career, really trying to drive that philosophy home defensively. Um, and then after that, getting the opportunity to work with Gary Gilmore, that may have been one of the most special days in my life. I was in my neighbor's pool across the street when I got a text on a Sunday afternoon, and Coach Gilmore, it just simply said, "TP, can we talk at 9 o'clock tonight?" And I kind of knew that Chad Oxendine, a close friend of mine, had accepted the job at Longwood, and that Coach Gilmore, might offer me an opportunity on his staff. Man, those 3 years were they were special. They were special, not only what the success we had, but just watching him day in and day out battle cancer and still just be so present every day and lead that ball club the way only he could do it. Obviously Kevin Schnall is one of my closest friends and is now the captain of that ship and has just continued to drive it forward to another national championship appearance last year. I came up a little short against LSU, but I don't think there were any doubts in that program that it was going to keep moving at an extremely high level. But obviously he spent a lot of years in Coach Gilmore's dugout. I got to spend 3, and they were 3 of the greatest years of my life. They really were, because he is he's everything that he's a Hall of Famer. There's no doubt about it. He's a Hall of Famer, a Hall of Fame person, and a Hall of Fame dad, and a Hall of Fame husband, and a Hall of Fame coach. And I'm so much better for him giving me the opportunity to work with him.
Coach Perry, we got a lot of baseball fans that are listening to this right now. And if they're listening really closely, the names you just rattled off are really a who's who of coaches, at least in this state and certainly across the country as well, that have their fingerprints all over you. Just an outstanding job of rattling off those names of guys that you've been able to share a dugout with, that have helped shape and mold you. Some of those guys I know as well closely too. Boy, we're fortunate, both of us are, to have had so many good mentors come across our path, that we were once upon a time just hoping to be able to kind of be in the close proximity to them. And then when you share a dugout with somebody the bus rides, the meals, the time in the locker room and the office, just those things and how it can shape and mold you. Really, really cool that you're able to give shout outs to all those guys. Before we turn away from the college game a little bit, I'd like for you to talk to folks. I think this is an interesting topic. We won't get too much into the rules of the NCAA because by the time we air this in a day, they may have changed. They're always evolving. But if you could kind of talk a little bit about how recruiting has changed really just in the last 5 years, 2 to 5 years, certainly from when you were at Winthrop the first go around, but really just in the most recent times, how recruiting has changed and what the focus is for you guys and how you construct your roster.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's clear cut. I mean, year to year, the one thing that I knew about, Coach McGuire and watching his teams from a distance were they were always very physical. The arms were very good arms. They had good stuff, and a lot of them were homegrown arms that came in as freshmen with some junior college and before the portal, it was some junior college guys sprinkled in, but a lot of the arms were guys that came in and developed under his tutelage and his pitching coaches along the way, and became big time power arms by the end of their career, and a lot of them moved on to professional baseball. But the position players, which I always noticed, is he had a lot of success at each of his stops with kind of older, established position players from junior college, and I think we've kind of adopted that here or brought it with him, and I. As the recruiting coordinator, along with Mike Napolitano and Ryan Miller, and we've do a lot more at the junior college level. I think in the fall we still get out and we try to get to all the events that we can. I mean, the all the Diamond Prospect events, they're on my calendar, the minute they're out. Between talking with you and Corey, I've got them on my calendar and they're etched in every year because we always want to we want to know the guys in our backyard. We want to do a very good job in our state, but outside of that, we're going to spend a lot of time in the fall identifying junior college players because Coach McGuire's success a lot of times has come from guys that go off to a junior college and they play every day and they get several hundred at bats under their belt before they move on to that 4-year school. And so, you're bringing them into your program and you're kind of teaching them how to play the way you want to play. But at the same time, you're getting a little older player, you're getting a little more experience and you're getting a little more physicality than you get from the high school player. Now, that being said, I don't want to, sit here and pigeonhole us and make anybody think that we don't recruit high school position players. We do. We've got a freshman shortstop on our team right now that has some developing to do, but is going to be a good player for us. Colin Crowley's a sophomore third baseman that he came in out of high school, was recruited by the previous staff, but came in out of high school. Coach McGuire's nephew came to us out of high school and is playing a good bit for us as a redshirt freshman. So we do have guys in our lineup that started here as freshmen, but at the same time, as the roster limitations have changed, you used to have 40 players on a roster. There were a couple of years after COVID where they expanded it even past 40, but it went from 35 to 40, and you could bring in a couple more high school aged players and bring them in to develop them. Whereas now they've cut it to 34 if you opted into the revenue share, which we did. We've got 34-man roster. It's tougher to bring in as many guys, whether it be on the mound or whether it be in the field. It's tougher to bring in as many guys with the thoughts of developing them. You need in today's, college baseball scope, you almost need to be older. You need to be physical and you need to be older. And I think I saw a stat on Twitter where the average age in Division I baseball, last year was 20 point something. This year's 21 point something. So it's gone up a year. Everybody as an average is a year older than they were last year. And now, I mean, there's proposals out there of 5 years to play 5 years. As long as you're not injured anywhere along the way. Obviously, the red shirts and the medical red shirts would be out the door. You would have 5 years from your high school graduation. Now, none of that's gone through yet. I don't know if it will. As you mentioned, the rules are changing every day. We just have to adapt to them, and do the best we can with our roster management. But I do think as a whole, when you look around and you see what teams are doing as they build their rosters, they are using the portal. I mean, there was a Jay Johnson interview the other day that, said he felt like maybe they went too heavy in the portal and got some guys with that were playing outside of LSU baseball. So I think there has to be a happy medium. I think we addressed some of our needs internally with the portal last year, with bringing in some older arms with some experience and some premium stuff that we didn't feel like we could get from the high school level. At the same time, I mean, we have a freshman pitcher that opened for us last night, and is probably going to end up somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 plus innings as a freshman. Next year's recruiting class, I mean, it has a lot of incoming freshman arms for us because we felt like we were old enough. We needed to bring in some younger guys and develop them. That being said, positionally, we probably still have, a couple holes to fill, and we'll probably do it with some older guys with some experience and physicality. So yeah, it's definitely changed. I get asked a lot by high school coaches, what are you guys doing and what should we be telling our high school, juniors and seniors? And I mean, the message that I try to send is, look, I can't speak for any other colleges or what they're doing to build their lineups. All I can tell you is advise your players to, go where they're wanted, go where they have the best chance to play. With the portal being the way it is now, it used to be that junior college was your only route to go 2 years and then go to a 4 year. Now, I know there's a lot of, Division II and Division III coaches that won't like me saying this, but it is an avenue, to go there first, and then potentially move on. I mean, just like the mid-major level is, it's being used as an avenue to get to the Power Four level. We don't like it any more than they do, but at the same time, if you're gonna be in this business, you have to adapt to it. It is what it is, and you either accept it and adapt to it, or you probably need to get out, which, a lot of people have with the rule changes and the NIL involvement and everything. A lot of people have chosen to move on because this isn't what they signed up for. Whereas I've just chose to embrace it, and we're going to do the best we can with the resources we have. We feel like we've got very good resources. We've got support from our alumni, support from our administration, and we're plugging away every day to find the best fits for the way that we want to play the game and the way that we want to do things.
Well, you mentioned adaptation, college coaches having to do that, and there's no way around that. You mentioned Mike McGuire several times too. He's a person who's been at several different schools over, about a 25-year span, and everywhere he's been successful. And he's had to adapt, just like you have. Anybody else that's in the college game, certainly in college sports these days, but in college baseball, why has he been so successful, regardless of where he was and what the rules may be at the same time? Tell us something we don't know about Mike McGuire.
Well, I think, first and foremost, he's done an outstanding job with roster management, and like I said, he's built the program from within. Each of his stops, I think he does an unbelievable job of getting the most out. No matter who recruited him or who coached him before he did, he comes in and he treats them like his own. He never says, wait till I get my group in, or my recruiting class in. It's, hey, we're going to take this club and, we're going to tweak some things maybe about the style of play, which I can tell you his style of play is an aggressive one. We lead the country in hit batsmen. There's a mindset there that him and Coach Napolitano have put, into our offensive players. Hey, we're not going to move our feet. We're going to be relentless in the box. We're going to be obsessed with getting on base. And, that's a mindset that not everybody has, but he's brought it to the table. He brings it everywhere he's been. You can look at the offensive numbers. His teams have traditionally hit over 300. They've been really, really good at hitting the fastball, hitting mistakes, and and getting on base. They've always had high on base percentages, and they've always scored runs. Obviously, the pitching numbers are a little skewed because some of the places he's been at, have been smaller yards. Morehead State's kind of an enigma because of the way their field's shaped. So, he's always had good pitching staffs. I mean, I can remember seeing a hot sheet around 20 or 21 where he had like 5 or 6 guys on his staff that were above 95, right around the time TrackMan was coming around and getting popular. He always had premium stuff on his staff. So, he wants to build a pitching staff that way. And we have the same mindset. I would say a lot of it came from, Coach Hudak's, philosophies, but he wants pitchers that are going to throw it over the plate, that are going to fill up the zone. He tells our guys all the time, hey, if you're not filling up the zone, you're not staying out there. And so that mindset, I think guys really like playing for him because I think they feel like he's in the fire with them. He's gonna throw BP. He's gonna hit fungo. He's gonna do everything. You look after the game, and he's gonna be walking around the field picking up trash, cleaning the alumni area after the alumni were here this past weekend, dragging the field, edging. On January 2nd, like he's a lifer, and I think his staff embraces that. Um, mentality. We're going to grab a pressure washer and we're going to pressure wash this stadium, the 4 or 5, 6 of us together, taking turns. And that's the mentality that he brings to the table. It's a very blue collar workman's, attitude and philosophy. And I think our guys, I think each program he's been at, I think they adapt to it very quickly. And then from there, it's a matter of adding pieces to the puzzle that are going to just make you better.
I'll tell you, TP, you're going to have everybody who's within earshot of this podcast scrambling to figure out what the dimensions are at Morehead State. Hey, before we wind down here, I want to give you one more opportunity. I'd like to hear what you got to say when it comes to shout outs. Basically, kind of go around the horn one last time. Anything that we left out, anybody that you left out, and I know you've got a lot of valuable people in your life, but when I say shout outs, maybe a handful of people that come to mind.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I spoke about my dad earlier, but my mom, Cindy Perry, who's, she's up there in Spartanburg, Moore area, and she's watching every game on ESPN Plus. She's on Game Changer watching, my daughter's game, last night and my son's game tonight. She's keeping up with all the grandkids and just a very special lady that man, she's been such a inspiration, such a great mom. I'd be remiss if I didn't give her a shout out. Obviously my wife Jenna, she grew up a coach's daughter, so she's been in it her whole life and she knows what it's all about. She's raised our kids around the ballpark. I think, Ava Grace, I can remember, she was born in the summer. I came home from Atlanta just in time for the birth and then left again, for probably 6 weeks recruiting and her mom stepped up and, came from Myrtle Beach to Asheville to stay with her, for the first couple weeks while Ava Grace was a newborn. Ava Grace was at the ball field as soon as she could be, and around the locker room. I've got pictures of her helping me do laundry and helping me hang jerseys and things. And I think that's why she's always had a passion for playing volleyball and softball, and I won't be surprised if she does something after college that involves athletics. Preston's been putting on older people's spikes and catcher's gear you know, since well before he fit into it. But he's grown up around the yard and he's been such a pack rat that, I'm excited to see, his future and how it plays out. Obviously you guys at Diamond Prospects, I can't say enough good things about the job that you do for the state of South Carolina. Obviously you mentioned our friendship and we've been, a lot of years together at the ball field, whether it be evaluating as college coaches or whether it be running a showcase or a camp or whatever. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to be involved with Diamond Prospects, whether it be the coaching the Palmetto games or hitting fungos, running the recruiting 101 talk, whatever the case may be, wherever I could help out, you gave me that opportunity. And I always appreciated that. The job that you and Corey and Barry and, Taylor and everybody that Dale Nelson, everybody's involved with that organization in covering high school baseball. I don't think anybody really, I think they get online and I think they see all the write-ups and everything, the scoreboard and the pitching rotations, but I don't think they have any idea the time that you and your staff puts in. And I can tell you that it's much appreciated from the college coaches, because it makes our job easier to go where we need to go and see who we need to see. And the spring break tournaments, that coverage, it's phenomenal. And I can't thank you enough for that. And just, I know I'm missing some people. Obviously, I talked about Gilly and Kevin, but the rest of that staff down there at Coastal, Matt Schilling, our 3 years together, and learned a lot from him. Got to room with him on the road and a lot of special talks, late at night and things like that. I mentioned Chad Oxendine, the rest of those guys down there, special group. Obviously, this group up here, Mike Napolitano and Ryan Miller, man, two young guys that are just, they're going to be all stars. They really are. They are studs. Their work ethic is impeccable, and they just, man, they grind. When it comes to recruiting, when it comes to, what Ryan Miller's done with the help of Mikey Bello on our field, really making it a unbelievable playing surface. Our mound's in great shape, and just the job that they do on a daily basis. It's a lot of fun to be around them. It's a lot of fun to be a part of.
Well, I appreciate you pinch hitting, as I mentioned, and I certainly appreciate the kind words, both personally and, of course, about Diamond Prospects. You've been a huge advocate of us, but also a very important, valuable piece to the puzzle when you were hanging out with us, yeah, over those years when you were still coaching at the high school level. But it's fun to see what you're accomplishing now. Obviously, joining forces with Coach McGuire and that good staff you have there. You guys have gotten off to better than a decent start, right? And you're putting yourself in position for all those team goals that you probably had at the beginning of the season are still in front of you. So congratulations on that and everything you've
Thank you.
accomplished. As somebody that we used to go to those Coach Doherty camps together when we were in middle school, high school, all the way to everything you've accomplished since then. Kudos to you. Congratulations on everything that you've done. With your career, with plenty of time left to go to continue impacting lives and bettering baseball careers. So, congratulations to you. I appreciate your time today.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thanks for having me on. And
So from there, we'll go ahead and finish up and wind down. Again, I'm Austin Alexander with Diamond Prospects. Please go to thediamondprospects.com. That is our website. There's so much information on there, especially right now with everything kind of coming down to a wire with region play, the playoffs beginning. We'll have everything that we see all the way to prognostications and previews to what we think may happen over the course of May. You've got Palmetto Pros. If you want to see what a guy who came through South Carolina, both as a high school player or as a college player, all of their stats are linked on our website. There's a lot there. So check that out, thediamondprospects.com. I want to thank our sponsors one more time, Architect Sports, Carolina's Counseling for Athletes. Again, I'm Austin Alexander. We'll go ahead and sign off. We'll see you at the ballpark real soon.